Hey, this week at Brook and Pond, we're going to start something a little different, and I would love your feedback on it. We're doing landscape probability every single week, and we're going to rate it on a scale of 0, being you ain't going to do crap, or 10, perfect time, let's get busy. Landscape probability, you're going to see our weather, and I would love to hear what your landscape probability and your current weather is where you're at. So I kind of just get an idea of where everybody is coming from, viewers, and what's your landscape probability. So today at Brook and Pond, we're starting off with a landscape probability of 0. 0, there is no way right now you could come out and seriously consider starting a landscape project. We have ground that's frozen down about 4 to 6 inches already. We have an average of about 6 to 7 inches of snow in the thicker parts, plowed in obviously the driveway areas. And I'm coming to you in the balmy temperature of 18 degrees today with an overnight low of 5 last night. Not exactly landscape weather. But this week we are talking about the landscape trends that are coming up for 2024. The popular ones, some of my opinion regarding them, and a little educational spoof to go along with it. I am glad you're here. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back. Hey, you know, in the residential landscape world, trends come and go, just like clothes, cars, everything else. And it's basically based on one generation to the next of, number one, how people learned about landscapes as they were growing up from their folks and their immediate family and their extended family. How did people landscape their yards? And they kind of replicate it to a certain point. That's one way the next generation does it. But there's also a little bit of a change from one generation to the next because of landscape skills, whether increased or diminished. Also the needs of the family of this day and age in 2023-24. You know, the average size of the family, I think, is bumped down 1 child, and pets too. Things are starting to reduce. Not out there procreating like we did back in the boomer years. I mean, I came from a family of 4. I know Maestro came from a family of 6. So starting to taper off. So some of the needs. The other thing is about the speed of life right now. Everything is instantaneous. Work, rearing a family, paying for a house, just life in general is so fast, and oftentimes landscapes tend to get bumped down that list of priorities, whether to put something new in or to improve what you have, and also the desires of people wanting to really invest into their landscape. Sometimes people's priorities change, and this is what affects trends shaping and forming and changing, just like an amoeba almost, depending on what those wants and needs are from each family. Okay, so let's talk about trends for just a second, and then we'll get into I think I have 6 or 7 of them for you today. So trends are nice. Trends are informational. They're oftentimes portrayed online and in magazines as, you know, to the nines, very, very fancy, spare no expense type of landscapes. But I caution you when it comes to some of them, because trends inspire us to kind of follow the road, follow the trend. They're very, very pricey, and oftentimes once people start doing some due diligence and really thinking about, God, I really like that on page 47. I'd really like to get that. That's where I'm going to go with our yard. And then even as a DIY level, you're looking at it and you've got $50,000 worth of materials, and it's going to take you 3 months to get it done, depending on what kind of schedule you have. Which brings me to the other thing before we get off into our actual trends, and that is this. Are these trendy things DIY friendly? Short answer, sure, kinda. For some, yes, and for some, no, they're not. They're a dream package, shall we say. Guaranteed 95% of all the trendy magazine and online pictures, the ones that really jump off the page at you, were done by professionals, not always DIYers. So what affects the landscape DIY probability of getting these trendy things in? Well, number one is time. If you're going to do it DIY and you don't have the money to do it professionally, have someone come in and do it for you, your time is going to be very important. If you're pulling down 40 to 40, who knows how many hours a week, running a business or working for somebody, you know, you're out of the house at 7 and you're back in at 5, and then Saturday and Sunday is all you got. Looking at that trendy, how much time is it honestly going to take? So you take a week of vacation, say in June, and you're going to do it. Can you do it in that 7-day time frame? Maybe, maybe not. The other one is cost. Like I said, these trendy things are really Taj Mahal type of landscapes. They're going to cost quite a bit of money. And so have you set that money aside? Have you set up a budget? Have you created a second mortgage for yourself so you have the dollars and then you couple it with the one before, time, and maybe you can get it done. But most of the time, what I used to see in my experience is it took all summer for somebody to do a yard. Really, it took all summer. It took 3 months of weekend warrioring at a little bit at a time. The longer days of summer, you're out there for an hour or so after work, and you're getting it done, but it is taking so long. So be aware of that. The other one, obviously, is the complexity. You know, you got a brand new pool, sheer descent waterfalls, you got ponds, you've got outdoor kitchens, you've got big patio cover and structures. The complexity of it really is going to protract out that cost and protract out that time. And if you're not in a big hurry, okay, fine. Knock it out over the course of 6 months, a year and a half. Weed Patch Ranch, it took me 2.25 years before that thing was done. And I still could have done more things, but I chose not to. We chose to get out of California. The other thing, although it has relaxed tremendously, I think in the last year or so, and that was availability of materials. A couple of years ago, you know, plant material, lumber, oh my gosh, availability of concrete trucks, availability of blocks, availability of a lot of things was really kind of a hamstring cutter for people doing some projects. Not all, but some. And lastly, your skill set. Realistically, if you take a real evaluation, you know, where is your skill set? Can you, as a DIYer, pull off, you know, page 47 and make it look that way, or even close to that way? Those are the things. And speaking of skill set, you can always sharpen your pencil quite a bit. If you go over to the website, I would love for you to visit and take a look at the book and the course. Also, don't forget about that checklist. Okay, let's get into the trends now. Now, the one thing about trends is sometimes they kind of repeat themselves through about a decade-long period. There's some changes, there's some tweaks within each type of trend, but for the most part, a generation, 10, 12, 15, maybe 20 years, you kind of have a similar type of thing. And out of the gate, number one, you'll hear it online all the time. Go native. Use native plants. They grow so much better in your area. Now, I have done a video on native plants, and I'll put a link to it right here and one down below. But native plants are okay, mostly. Just remember about native plants, they have one thing in mind: sprouting, blooming, going to seed, and dispersal. That's a native plant. It's all about reproduction and spreading the species. And oftentimes you get into some kind of native grasses, native shrubberies, especially things that set flower and berry and birds carry them off. And oftentimes some of those natives become kind of problematic and invasive. So be aware of that. So remember, the other thing is if you go native, go out and do some research and find out what native plants are in your area. They may not be that pretty. They may not be the type that can be controlled into an ornamental type of landscape. And how much maintenance is involved? Do you have the type of environment around you? You know, the old 60 by 100 foot lot. And the Smiths across the street have lawn and trees and shrubberies and that kind of stuff. The Joneses, 2 doors down, everybody has the normal landscape. And you're going to come in and put this native landscape in. And are you going to have it so it looks like the prairie that's 2 miles out in the field out there? Or are you going to have something that blends nicely with the rest of the neighborhood? So native plants, good to go if you're on rural properties. Be careful if you're in the small residential neighborhoods of the suburbs. Might look at it just a little different. And if you decide to test it, maybe test it in the backyard in a corner somewhere and see how it does, see what it looks like, and then maybe expand on it as you see fit. All right, number 2, something that used to be an absolute staple in everybody's yard, shall we say 100 years ago, and all the way up through my generation, and then right about, I would say, the 1970s, it started to taper off tremendously. And that was the edible landscape. And it is back, and it's back in a big, big way. You know, with the recent years of inflation in all forms and fashion of living anymore, one of the biggest inflammatory cost things is food, especially produce. My God, I never thought I'd see the day where I was paying $1 an orange ever in my entire life. And here we are, we're almost $1 an orange. And lemons, I saw lemons yesterday for 79 cents a piece, a single lemon. So now the edible landscape is coming back, and it's coming back in some traditional ways as far as the veggie garden, etc. But it's also coming back with the edibles being mingled, blended, and used in the landscape itself. There are many, many leafy vegetables. There are bold, leafy type of plants that bear. There's the genetic and semi-dwarf fruit trees. There's the dwarf citruses, and all of these are being used very, very regularly as far as landscape plants now. And then you can go out and harvest some of your foundation bed, plain and simple. And once you rotate that crop out, you can put something else in and grow it for the fall and winter, depending on where you're at. Or you can do containers, depending on where you're at, and actually curb some of the inflation when it comes to your produce bin in your fridge or your fruit bowl on your table. So the edible landscapes are coming back in a big, big way. And I see with the smaller yards and everything, people are doing a lot more raised beds as far as the traditional veggie gardens, but also getting into container landscapes, raised bed landscapes. And they do have some ornamentals here and there, but a lot of them, I've seen some container landscapes for backyards that are 100% edible. And I think it's cool. So you can use things like blueberries, blackberries on trellises, the dwarf fruit trees, the dwarf citruses, and use the leafy vegetables for striking, like some of the kales, artichoke plants. Artichoke plants back in the 70s, as a new designer, we were using artichoke plants as a bold backdrop with the huge spiny looking gray leaves and stuff, very striking. And then you got to harvest artichokes from them once they became somewhat mature. Very, very useful, bold, striking patterns when it comes to that stuff. So consider the edible landscape from this point on. It's one of the trends that is going to keep on growing for quite a while, I think. Number 3, a big trend because of demand. And when I say that, we have larger homes, 2-story homes on dinky lots in some of the suburbia. A lot of the jobs that I did were always on like 60-foot by 100-foot type of yards. And I can remember specifically one design that I did for a couple that was going to DIY their backyard. They bought the only 1-story, 1,600 square foot rancher and were surrounded on 2 sides and three back fence lines with 2-story homes. They were in a fish bowl, literally. And they didn't know it at the time when they bought. They bought in phase 1. By the time the developer and the builder came back around and was coming down the other street, this was a cul-de-sac in the back. And so you had big house 1, big house 2, and big house 3, and then the 2 big ones that they bought during their phase 1, and they said, Coach, what the heck are we gonna do? We need to put this yard in and look. So I put my creative cap on, and we came up with privacy screens that had to do with patio covers, patio sides, fast growing screening trees, as much as you can get something to grow. And we accomplished 80%. We were never gonna get 100%, but we got 80%. Anyway, the privacy trend, getting yourself kind of segregated from your neighbor just a little bit. So if you want to go out and enjoy your patio without old naggy Mrs. Smith up here in her bedroom window looking down and saying, what are you guys doing down there? You can kind of do it. And some of the best ways to do it now is decorative fencing, horizontal fencing, screening, and then incorporating it with patio arbors, solid or latticed, it doesn't matter, and then fast growing screening material, junipers, evergreens, etc. Make sure you select the right evergreens. If you're out on the West Coast, make sure you got a lot of room if you go down the coast redwood route. I caution you on that. But the privacy trend is a big deal. People back east, back where I'm at, it's still not uncommon to see those backyards with the chain link fence going down both sides, and you can see backyard to backyard all the way down the block. And some people like it because that's just the norm, and some people don't, and they do something about it. So remember, privacy trend. Hey, and if you're interested, I've done some videos specifically on privacy, and it'll be right down here. Hey, moving on. This one here is kind of a sliding scale depending on you. And that's the low maintenance trend. With life being a fast-paced world right now, oftentimes, like I said at the top of the show, our landscapes tend to take a back seat when it comes to priority. The big key to low maintenance landscapes is with the lawn, if you can. Back here on the East Coast, lawn is the most prevalent part of a landscape. And then you have the little 2 and 3 foot foundation beds, and that's all people do. Probably mostly out of convenience, partly also because of lack of creativity, but lawn just tends to do well back here, and Mother Nature waters it. But low maintenance is basically a sliding scale, like I said. Some people consider low maintenance if they only have to deal with the yard once a week, mowing the lawn, and they call it good. Some people, going lawnless, you can stretch that out to kind of quarterly nipping and tucking, remulching, feeding, doing a flower bed every quarter type of thing, cleaning up in the fall. You don't have to do much of anything in the winter except, clear snow walkways and that kind of stuff. And quarterly. Other people go the whole extreme route where they gravel everything, put in patios and walkways, a couple of container plants here and there, and that's it, because they travel so much. Now, Maestro and I traveled for three years and 7 months, and I never had that low a maintenance. I know my son down in Arizona, he went from 2.5 acres and having to spend hours and hours every week mowing and a lot of money putting in a big landscape. And hey, they moved, went to a gravel front yard and a pool in the back, and that's it. And I think he probably, the last time I talked to him, he said, yeah, I blow down the walkways once in a while, and that's about it. That's all. So he went from one extreme to an absolute other. But low maintenance is a growing trend along with edibles. And man, I kind of like, if you can't pick up on it, I kind of like going out and doing things in the landscape. And to have nothing to do out there, that's an extreme I'll probably never have. But a lot of people like it, and it allows them and frees them up to do other things that they enjoy. The landscape maintenance scale, the lower the better for many people, and I think it's going to be a trend that is going to be around for many, many more years because life just isn't slowing down. Okay, moving on. A trend that started back in the 70s in earnest, got a little momentum in the 80s. In the 90s, especially mid-90s, it, thanks to Greg Wittstock and aquascape, water gardens started to become all the rage. And ever since the year 2000 and beyond, it has just skyrocketed. And everybody loves the sound of water, whether it's spilling, whether it's cascading, whether it's a babbling brook, whatever people can create, water as an element in the landscape is going to be a big, hot topic. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this. There's a lot of these trends that you can take and mold and blend into each other very well. I love water in the landscape. Had it at Weed Patch Ranch, and it was one of the driving forces of why we bought Brook and Pond. Duh, Brook and Pond. We have a beautiful brook out near the road. We have a nice pond that's in the backyard and a brook that feeds it, although it is frozen almost solid now. But there's nothing like sitting outside, having a beverage after a hard day's work, and listening to that sound of running water. It just has an effect on humans, and people want it more and more. They want that ability to come home after a stressful day, put their feet up in the backyard and enjoy a tranquil retreat, period. So I think you'll see water gardens and water features more and more trendy as next year comes and beyond. Remember, with water features, it's always going to be placement. Placement and location of where you're going to put it. Front door entry areas, outside master bedrooms, outside family rooms, in a location where the outdoor living area, you can view it and you can also hear it at the same time. And that is very important. Don't sequester it somewhere where it doesn't make any sense, small side yards and whatnot, unless it's the theme of your landscape, front, back, and sides. You can have multiple features going at the same time. So remember, water gardens, big, popular trend. All right, number 6, I affectionately call the escape pod. And other people call them man caves, she sheds, big popular item. And you can see them in many magazines. A lot of people use them for actual workplaces back there, work offices. Other people use them as an escape, a place where you can go do some woodworking or some type of craft, maybe an artist studio. Maybe it's a 5 television, gotta watch the game every Sunday type of place with a kegger and bar on one end and big screens all the way around so you can watch your favorite teams. But whatever it is, you see these becoming more and more popular. You know, you can have a tough shed drug into the backyard, assembled, then you landscape around it, you give some electricity out there, and you're able to enjoy a specific place when the weather isn't like what I'm in right now. You can get out there, warm that thing up, maybe put a potbelly stove in there and enjoy it during the wintertime. And you've got a Mr. Cool air conditioner in the summertime where you can go, the kids can play somewhere else, and you have your escape pod. So think about those things. They are very popular. You can build them yourself if you're good, or you can buy them. They got them displayed down at the box stores, and you can always find them online as well. So those little things are becoming. Just remember, if you have a yard, you're going to have some space, so select it carefully. Generally, it's off to the backyard corner type of thing. And if you're in an HOA, make sure you read your rules and it's not sticking up above the fence line or some other ridiculous rules that some neighborhoods have. Okay, our last one, number 7, is the ever-present drought tolerant landscape. And I'm going to link this to the one that I just talked about a minute ago, and that was the low maintenance landscape. Drought tolerance and water conservation is a thing that is never going to go away. With our changing environments all the time and restricting expensive water bills, people are finding reasons, obviously good ones, to use water sparingly. You know, I had a client many years ago in the city of Galt, California. Thank you, Laura. She had an interesting situation. She had a water bill that was in the 300s every month. She had a big lawn in the back, a big lawn in the front, crappy lawns, but she had to water them. And when we got done, we reduced her water bill by 90%. Her household water and her landscape water totaled up between $65 to $70. It was really a big savings. And that $200 and some odd, return on investment quotient was pretty darn good. And we did it with gravels and plants and boulders and containers and a big water feature in the back, the biggest stacked slate urn that I could get. It was 5 feet tall, and man, I think you could hear that thing probably 2 fences away. I had to actually turn it down just a little bit. But it turned out great, and she was very, very happy with it. But drought tolerance, you can achieve a drought tolerant landscape just like the low maintenance thing by getting rid of the lawn. Getting rid or reducing the lawn quite a bit. Hey, Weed Patch Ranch, I could have had 2+ acres to mow. And instead, I had probably about, 7,500 square feet total. Front, backyard, and the front yard, yeah, it was probably maybe 7,000 square feet, which was probably more than I should have had. But remember, Weed Patch was kind of a show place. I was able to bring people out there and show pictures of it to get jobs. So I had to kind of have it a little bit nice. So there you go. There's 7 landscape trends that I know you're going to see and you can research. Don't forget to think about the blending and melding of one and another that's going to be very, very popular and very DIY friendly. Hey, and if you get stuck on what to decide on, I'm only an email away. youryardcoach@gmail.com. Don't forget the website. Guys, I am freezing to death. I cannot feel the tips of my fingers anymore. I'm going to go inside and get warm, and I will see you guys next Friday. Don't forget the podcast if you're on the go, and the website for a couple of things, especially gift ideas for people who are going to have a project next year. Anyway, as always, to your landscape success, goodbye for now.